What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Yesterday, absolute disaster struck, and if you were online on social media, you may have thought the entire world was ending as markets were getting absolutely crushed. And yes, that did also bring in discussion around the video game companies, since a ton of money flows through that sector, and we're going to go over what happened here today. Also, we're going to be talking about The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, as we got a whole bunch of new details that were outlined by Nintendo in a new video. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but based on a new listing that was spotted online, people now have reason to believe that we could actually see Valve introduce Half-Life 3 here soon. We'll take a look at that, though, here today. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And, of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you'd like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're going to start today with a follow-up for the story around Game Informer shutting down. Well, it looks like there was one last gasp from the staff there, and then GameStop put an end to that pretty quickly. We can see this is actually posted up. This was noted by Eric Van Allen, who says, after a former Game Informer staffer used the site's social accounts to post their own statement on Game Informer's closure, GameStop nukes the account. And you could see here the listing that they posted up here was just the different, like the editor-in-chief, the magazine content director, online content director, basically people who worked to make everything possible there with that magazine and their online presence on the website. They say, we're heartbroken by the shutdown of our publication, yet we leave with pride knowing we poured everything we had into it. And then they have some quotes from the different members of the staff. But I guess, I mean, it was like a couple hours later, GameStop just absolutely crushed that account, got it out of there real quickly. So I guess somebody else got a hold of the login details, and they went ahead and started posting that kind of stuff up. But definitely a bad look there for GameStop, and still a lot of questions around why this was so abrupt. Like, it really did feel like it just happened overnight, and it was gone. And by the way, that includes apparently just some exclusive covers they had for things like the new Dragon Age coming up. So they're sort of left just kind of hanging out like, okay, where's all that stuff that we sent to publication with you guys? So again, it seems very, very strange that it all happened so quickly. Also, while we talked about that Black Ops 6 leak, it now appears that the game is just playable online. This, we can see, was noted over on Twitter X from Brutal Sam. It said that Black Ops 6 is already playable online with PS LAN on jailbroken PS4s. It's a development build of Black Ops 6, but still people are playing it. They're showing off more and more of the gameplay, some of the features, which includes being able to grab somebody in the multiplayer match and use them as a human shield while you're firing back against their team. And I have to assume that there's some sort of proximity chat that is enabled there. Kind of remind me a bit of the old Splinter Cell days with the spy versus mercenary, and you can grab the mercenary and say something to them before you take them out. And of course, it's all just kind stuff that was being said. Nothing malicious there. But I will say Black Ops 6, the more I'm seeing of it through this leaked footage and gameplay, it does look legitimately different from what I've been used to for years now with Call of Duty. So I'm getting a bit excited to check this one out. Again, going in the closed beta here in the next few weeks. Oh, and we had maybe one of the strangest things reported. Everybody 1-2 Switch topped the sales chart. Yeah, this is out in Australia, and here's the chart for them, and yeah, everybody 1-2 Switch somehow beat out Grand Theft Auto 5 for that #1 spot. These charts reflect July 22nd to the 28th that week. And then below that, we have NBA 2K24, EA Sports College Football 25, Red Dead Redemption 2, Elden Ring, Advance Wars 1 and 2, Hogwarts Legacy, Plants vs. Zombies, Garden Warfare 2, and then Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege. So already kind of a weird looking sales chart. I guess like Elden Ring would make sense to be on there, but maybe higher than that. Some were speculating if there was some sort of sale for everybody 1-2 Switch, but there wasn't any evidence that anyone's been able to find of that at least being publicized or advertised out there, that everybody 1-2 Switch was almost given away, I guess. But who knows, maybe that week people in Australia really wanted to play everybody 1-2 Switch. If you're out there and you're watching, let me know if there was some sort of promotion or just something that was being run, because we are legitimately trying to figure out the reasoning around this because it is hard to believe that everybody 1-2 Switch all of a sudden started selling. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with disaster on the stock market that, of course, took its toll across the board on pretty much every big publicly traded gaming company. And yes, that does include like Nintendo, Sega, Square Enix. I mean, it got ugly there online with when the stock market was open, especially in Japan, which we can see this over on Circantoto's account, where he does note all the different gaming companies here, even saying it's Monday at 1:30 p.m. in Tokyo now, and investors in the stock market continue to panic and are causing a bloodbath. Nintendo was down 15% at one point. In fact, when I checked as they closed out that day, they were actually down nearly 16%, which when you have valuations of these companies in the billions of dollars, that's a lot of money that just all of a sudden gets pulled out of that company in terms of that liquidity and that value. Sega down 13%, Capcom at 16%, Nexon 13%, Cave 23%, Marvelous 10%, Sony was down 6%. Sony has had days like that previously, even worse than that, so they actually made out okay technically. Even like Square Enix, for example, being down 5%, not the worst I've seen from Square Enix. Now, people were trying to figure out what exactly was going on, as even across the world, like Nintendo and the New York Stock Exchange that I saw, they were down 13% for the day. So it was pretty much across the board. You were seeing these kind of drops. And a lot of people have been trying to explain what was happening, and I have noticed that even people who are really into the financial world with the stock market were having a hard time connecting the dots, which means the big firms probably did a very good job jumping from place to place to place to make this as complicated as possible and hard to track as possible. But essentially, it comes down to the yen, of course, in Japan. That was very easy to borrow and then use elsewhere because there was inflation running rampant across the globe, but not necessarily in Japan with the yen. And then kind of out of nowhere, they raised interest rates and they actually made the yen a bit more valuable. And that ended up hurting people who had borrowed and then borrowed again and then borrowed again and was moving money all over the place in order to take advantage of that weaker exchange rate, which then sent a cascading effect, and you saw a bunch of sell-offs as people were most likely margin called and they had to come up with liquidity from somewhere. So they sell all the different stocks that I guess were in places like Nintendo, Capcom. I saw EA was down, Take-Two was down. It was pretty much, again, all the different publicly traded companies got absolutely hammered. Nvidia was getting absolutely crushed, even though they've had a pretty good run for quite a while now. Basically, no one was really safe, and we saw those effects, again, all across social media where people were very, very concerned that there was an immediate recession about to happen. However, as I started recording here, I did check just to see, because a lot of times you have these sell-offs, then you may see kind of like a realization of, oh, maybe it's not as bad as we were thinking, and it starts to then just almost have like that V-shaped bounce. And it's actually happening with Nintendo now, where it's randomly up like 12 or 13%. So hey, at the end of the day, this is probably something that'll end up passing, and if anyone out there tells you they know how things are going to move with the stock market, you might want to find a new broker. Also, while I know the business side of gaming and stuff can be kind of boring, it is still very important to note because that can affect decisions that are made now long into the future because of how long it takes game development really to take place. You may end up having decisions made in terms of being more conservative and not trying to take major risks that would make a game maybe not be greenlit that could have been really cool down the road. But again, the business side always plays into this stuff. So it is certainly important to keep an eye on just the general market, especially when some of these crazy events happen, because you can have knee-jerk reactions from these different companies with the decision-making behind the scenes. But at least for now, I think this is something that will end up kind of being a bit of a speed bump in the long run. Hopefully. There's still a lot of other things happening right now in the world that could affect the market, and of course just the amount of money that's available and how easy it is to borrow and then use that for game development. So we'll see in the coming weeks, but right now I'm hoping that this is something we'll kind of look back on as just that crazy Monday that happened after the weekend with the yen all of a sudden becoming somewhat valuable. Next up, let's talk about The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, as we had about a 5-minute video that showcased some of the abilities and locations in the game. I will say this, the game is looking better and better as it's shown off because Nintendo did something smart here where they don't try to hit you with all the information at once. They gave you a nice look at the game initially with some of the abilities where you're like using echoes to copy enemies or different items in the game, and that is a really cool twist on it. And now we have other mechanics being added in, but let's take it from the top here with the video that was posted by Nintendo. And we'll start with the different areas that they pointed out: Gerudo Desert, the Jabu Waters, Eldin Volcano, the Farron Wetlands. I mean, these do look very different from one another. Obviously, we go from the desert to volcano to wetlands, but it does seem like this is going to maybe play into, I guess, the different dungeons where you're having these different areas that'll then play into those themes, whether it's fire or you'd have like water, forest area. So pretty traditional, I'd say, in terms of what we expect from some of these Zelda games. You do have quests to complete as you go through the game. Look like you'd be rewarded with different items as you go as well, maybe even different abilities. That's very possible. Waypoints will let you warp around the map very quickly after you discover them, of course. So once maybe you go through a very treacherous area, whether it's like through, let's say, a small area of the forest, come out the other side, waypoint, now I can, of course, jump to this easily. You also have a horse you can ride around with, and they did show another, so they showed a couple of horses. I'm wondering if you can either change their look through different outfits you get for them, or maybe you just get different horses in general as you play through. You can combine ingredients that you find to make, they say, smoothies, which are mostly just power-ups. You also have outfits and accessories that will alter your stats or just your overall appearance. And then they introduced Bind, which is an ability that is certainly going to play into your echoes, along with something called Reverse Bond. So Bind allows you to move enemies or objects in the world, whereas Reverse Bond lets you move with that enemy. So the enemy will move you, or I guess technically object, and that combined with your echoes, to me, looks like it's going to make for some awesome puzzles that will most likely be really fun to solve in these different dungeons. So a lot of possibilities here by combining these different abilities that, again, they're introducing almost one by one and then kind of letting you go from there and realizing how much is possible here. And it does feel like they made this game, right? This sandbox almost, this world, and they came up with all these fun abilities for you to just kind of go about it and do, like, solve these puzzles however you see fit. And that seems like an awesome idea with the sort of freedom involved here. And they do have it, of course, releasing September 26th. So a little less than 2 months now away, but I'm actually pretty excited for this one. I like my top-down Zelda games, and while this isn't necessarily a quote-unquote traditional Zelda game where you're playing as Link, you have a sword, shield, and all those other items and gadgets, this does feel like a big enough twist on that entire formula, that top-down Zelda game, that it is genuinely interesting. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this one again coming up September 26th. Next up, get the clown makeup out, ladies and gentlemen, because we're going to talk about Half-Life 3. Yes, it's back. I know it sounds weird because that's been such a meme for so long online, like, oh, maybe this is it, finally, Half-Life 3, it's going to be a thing. Well, people are linking stuff to the potential of this title now based on different code names, and I know it probably is a lot of code people just really hoping that this is a thing. But let's see where it's coming from. We can see this is actually noted over on Eurogamer in a report. We had a follow-up and an update as well throughout the day that was posted. But starting from the top, saying there's a chance by the time you read this, Natasha Shandell's website has already been revised, but right now you can scroll down to the voiceover section. You'll see reference Project White Sands. That they say it's a video game. Shandell did not name the character she provided voice work for, but the project is clearly marked as belonging to Valve. Now, the website is currently down after exceeded the bandwidth limit because people, of course, wanted to go see if this was real, and yes, it was. And I say was because it has been updated and all references to Valve's Project White Sands has been scrubbed, is gone. So almost like, oh, I wasn't supposed to put that there, and now it's making the rounds on some of these websites. Let's just go in and delete that and click update real quick. Well, of course, it's too late. The internet member will never forget this stuff, and Reddit gaming leaks and rumors have gone wild with this thing. Comments all over the place looking into this. What could White Sands mean? Well, one comment sticks out in particular, saying White Sands is a park in New Mexico, a state where there was Black Mesa. And that is all it takes to now link it to Half-Life 3. And there have been some speculation for a long time that Valve has been playing around with ideas for Half-Life 3, even developed parts of it, just seeing what they can come up with different prototypes. But The problem you run into with Half-Life 3, you can create a game that is a 10 out of 10, but if it's not an 11 out of 10, will it meet those expectations? Because that's kind of what it feels like have stacked up now. Expectations that are impossible to meet with a Half-Life 3. You'd have to come up with some crazy concept, I'm sure, around it, a bit of a twist, like how with Half-Life 2, there was an emphasis on physics with like the gravity gun and stuff. There are all kinds of fun things you can do there. And I remember even checking it out on the original Xbox. It's been noted many times. I know MVG even has done videos on it, how that was like a miracle that it existed there in general. But even on PC now with some of the mods and stuff for graphics that people have done, the ray tracing stuff, it still holds up really, really well. And I just feel like now the legend that's grown around Half-Life 3, it's almost not worth it in Valve's mind to make a serious push for it, because it may never be able to live up to the hype that's built. But then the longer you wait, the more hype that builds, and it's just this never-ending cycle to where, hey, if you think you can put it out and you think you can make money, why not take a shot at it? Half-Life Alyx, really looking at it as just a VR game, did really well, especially with reviewers, and I guess it's sold well enough, but still, I think people would like to hear about the next Half-Life game not being secluded to a VR headset, but just being a full-on game, and yes, having the number 3 at the end of it. Is this possibly Half-Life 3? Could be. Could also just be a spin-off of just the Half-Life franchise, and that wouldn't shock me either, but it does seem like, yes, something is brewing within Valve, and we'll see what it is, hopefully sooner rather than later, because again, the longer they wait for something like a Half-Life 3, the harder and harder that mountain is to climb. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about the teaser that was released for The Last of Us Season 2 that, well, you guessed it, is based on The Last of Us Part 2. And this is actually over on the Max official account. And I don't think I can show you the video necessarily because they copyright claim and strike everything when it comes to this sort of stuff with these different series and movies. But it does, yes, appear to be following along with what we already know to be happening soon, and many viewers who have never played the game are about to realize is gonna be some, we'll say, emotional moments, but they do say a sneak peek of Season 2 of the HBO original series Last of Us coming in 2025 to Max. I'm hoping it's not till after April or May, maybe it's in like the summertime, because then there's perfect opportunity for them to run some of the teasers and commercials during the Masters for golf. I think that'd be awesome anyway, I am curious if they decide to change things up a little bit with this, because they still will take some creative changes and differences that we saw even with the first season. I'm curious if they play around with maybe the timeline of events to keep certain characters in place longer, maybe, but they did show like the ending for Season 1, as you'd expect, kind of the bridge and the story leading up now to Season 2. Just some quick snippets of that here and there, with Joel, of course, talking about his decision at the end of that season. So if you have not watched Season 1, obviously you'll want to start doing that now, because I do think Season 2 is going to be pretty interesting, especially to see the reactions online after what I assume to be a certain episode airs and they take a certain path, we'll say, for one of the characters. But let me know what you guys think about this, and if you're excited for Season 2 down below. And yes, I did everything possible here not to ruin what happens in either Season 1 or The Last of Us Part 2. And it was very, very hard not to make more than one golf joke. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, do you think we'll ever see Half-Life 3 release? Wow, 79% say no, there's no way we're ever going to see it. 21% of you are still hopeful. And I think that will be a really fun reveal to see. One, it'd be interesting just to find out what direction they feel comfortable to go in to really warrant a reveal like that and them actually taking a shot at it. But also just to have that moment. We don't get a lot of those moments anymore, where it does feel like something that's been going on for decades now, really, to finally have that big moment of, okay, it is actually a thing, whether they have maybe the logo fade in and then the 3 on the side that's stylized in some way, or they just say, hey, Half-Life 3 is a thing, they just drop it, that like a title card on Twitter, hey, tune in here and you'll see more about it. Either one would absolutely break the internet, and that would be a lot of fun to see. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from The Last of You. It says, how did PS2 sold so many units? Back then, less people and only one console per household. Now there are more than one Switch units per home, and there are more people in the world. So right now, our time is being divided by multiple different devices, right? So this would have been 2000, 2001 that the PS2 came out, of course, depending on your region and stuff. And then from there ran all the way to 2006, that holiday, 2005 for the 360. But that time, we didn't have tablets or phones where you're playing all these different games on. There wasn't this whole free-to-play market that were really described now as black hole games, even things like Fortnite and stuff that pull a lot of attention. But when it comes to the consoles, the PlayStation 2 was viewed, yes, as a game system, but also as just this multimedia device. You buy this PS2, put it under your tube TV then, your living room, and it does everything for you. It'll play CDs if you want to listen to music, it'll play DVDs if you want to watch movies, or it'll play games. And really at that time, and then a lot of the support that Sony got for that system, and they got out ahead of Xbox, which was new at the time, or Microsoft was a newcomer on the scene, and then Nintendo, who sort of faltered with the 64, and then here they come with a GameCube that didn't play DVDs. I mean, I don't want to say it was a clear path for Sony, but it was pretty easy path for them to run with there as they mounted more and more support. And there was one other thing that's kind of hard to point out in the statistics or like the history books. There was like this feeling for the PS2 where you go to your friend's house, you'd play it, and you'd be like, this is it. This is the game system. If I'm going to buy one system, I'm going to buy this. And a lot of it also was your friend would sort of convince you to pick it up, especially if they're playing Madden or anything with multiplayer. You go, okay, well, yeah, obviously I'm going to get a PlayStation 2. That's going to be one of the systems. Even a multi-system household, and you're picking between the GameCube or the Xbox. You weren't picking between the Xbox and the PS2 or the GameCube and the PS2. You probably had a PS2, and you're trying to figure out what system of the other two you wanted to get maybe that Christmas. But the PS2 absolutely took over. And we really haven't seen anything come close since then in terms of home consoles, but it does look like the Switch has a legitimate shot at it. So we'll see how things shake out for it, especially over the next year or so, as Nintendo tries to juggle the new system announcement while trying to sell more and more of these Switch systems that started up back in 2017. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Was the market crash on Monday that affected pretty much every company, but also a lot of the gaming companies? What were some of your reactions as you watched that unfold? And then also, what about The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom? Are you liking what you're seeing so far in some of these presentations? And then, do you think it's possible that Valve actually shows up and announces Half-Life 3, especially after this White Sands project was found? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.